Denise did everything right. She saved for 35 years without ever missing a beat. She retired at 62 with $740,000. And every single night while she slept, her nest egg quietly shrank. Not from spending, not from a market crash. It shrank from 5 costs she never once saw. There was no invoice, there was no alert on her phone, no withdrawal notification, no red warning, absolutely nothing. The money simply left her account in the dark. Think about that phrase for just one honest moment. While you are asleep, your money is still doing something. It is either quietly growing or it is quietly leaking. For millions of careful savers, it is doing far more leaking. And nobody ever wakes you up to tell you it happened. Most people think their savings only move when they spend. They picture a crash, a big expense, a bad year. But the real danger is far quieter than any of that. It is the cost that arrives silently while you sleep. By the time Denise noticed, the damage was already done. Her $740,000 should have lasted 3 full decades. Instead, it was quietly on track to run dry early. At 62, that was a genuinely terrifying place to be. She had done the hard part and still faced a shortfall. 5 silent costs were draining it, night after night after night. And here is the uncomfortable part you really need to hear. Denise is not careless. Denise is the careful one. The people who lose the most are very often the savers. They trust the system, so they never check for the leaks. Today we break down all 5 of those hidden leaks. We put a real dollar figure on every single one, and we show you exactly how Denise closed them. By the end, you will have a simple checklist of your own. 5 leaks to find and 5 ways to seal each one. None of them require luck, timing, or a hot new stock. They just require you to look where you have never looked. Let me be very clear about what this video is not. This is not hustle culture, and it is not shame. You did not fail because your money quietly leaked away. Nobody ever handed you the map for this part. The math was hidden on purpose, and we are surfacing it. So, picture Denise on her first morning of retirement, coffee in hand, spreadsheet open, feeling genuinely proud of herself. $740,000, 35 years of quiet discipline. She had a paid-off house and a modest, comfortable lifestyle. She planned to travel a little and spoil her grandchildren. Her plan said the money would comfortably last until 92. On paper, she looked like a retirement success story. The plan was honest, but the plan was also incomplete. It counted her spending. It never counted the silent costs. And silent costs do not ever show up on a budget. They show up in the gap between what you should have and what you actually keep. Over 30 years, that gap can quietly swallow a fortune. For Denise, that gap was heading toward $300,000. $300,000 she earned, saved, and never got to spend. Let me keep this fair because Denise did nothing foolish here. She was not gambling, and she was not overspending on herself. She was a disciplined, cautious, by-the-book kind of saver. The leaks found her precisely because she stopped looking closely. That can happen to almost anyone who trusts the process. So do not read this as blame aimed at Denise. Read it as a flashlight aimed at your own account. Here is what the data shows about each silent cost. We start with the one that almost everyone underestimates. Silent cost number 1 is the fee you barely even notice. Denise owned a few mutual funds inside her retirement plan. Nothing exotic at all, just ordinary, boring, brand-name funds. The expense ratio on one of them read 1%. 1%. To her, it sounded like a rounding error. Denise saw that tiny number and felt completely safe. She reasoned that 99% of her money was working. What could one measly percent possibly do to her over time? That single assumption is the most expensive one she ever made. Most people believe a 1% fee is basically trivial. Here is what nobody tells you about that 1%. It is not charged only on your gains, it is charged on everything. Every dollar you hold pays that fee, every single year. And it compounds against you for as long as you invest. Think of it as a slow leak in the bottom of a bucket. You keep pouring water in, and it keeps quietly draining out. John Bogle, who built the very first index fund, ran this exact math. Take a fund that charges you 2% per year. Assume a normal long-term market return of 7%. Now run that math forward across a 50-year investing life. 2/3 of your entire nest egg ends up going to Wall Street. Not 1/3, not a small slice. 2/3 of everything you built. You put up 100% of the money yourself. You take on 100% of the market risk yourself. And you keep only about 30% of the actual reward. Let the real numbers make this painfully, unforgettably concrete. Start with $100,000 at 7% for 50 years. That single amount grows to about $3.3 million. Now subtract just 2% in fees each and every year. That very same money grows to only $1.2 million. 2% in fees quietly erased over $2 million. That is the tyranny of compounding costs, working silently against you. Let me show you the leak year by year with Professor Money. In year 1, a 2% fee on Denise feels like nothing. By year 10, it has quietly skimmed a meaningful pile away. By year 20, the missing growth is larger than the fees themselves. By year 30, the gap has become a second lost fortune. The fee never changes, but its shadow grows every single year. That is why a number that looks tiny does such enormous damage. For an ordinary American saver, lifetime fund fees near $109,000. $109,000 paid quietly, decade after decade after decade. Now here is the genuinely good news that you can act on. The average stock fund fee has fallen hard over the past 2 decades. Back in 2000, it sat at around 0.76%. By 2024, the typical 401k equity fund charged just 0.26. The best low-cost index funds can charge under 0.10. That difference is not small at all. That difference is a house. Denise moved one fund from 1% to 0.05. On her balance, that single move saved thousands of dollars every year. And across her whole retirement, it saved her a small fortune. The fund did the same job for a fraction of the price. Same market, same risk, but almost none of the drain. Silent cost number 1 finally closed while she was wide awake. Which brings us to a very close cousin of the fund fee. Silent cost number 2 is the advisor's quiet 1%. Denise also paid a financial advisor to manage all her money. The fee was 1% of her total balance per year. It came out automatically, quietly, 4 separate times a year. She never once wrote a check, so she never actually felt it. Most people never do the real math on that 1%. So let us do the math the way an honest planner would. A 1% annual advisory fee genuinely sounds gentle and fair. But researchers went and measured what it does to your income. It is roughly equal to cutting your safe withdrawals by 21%. Please read that again slowly, because the number is brutal. The fee is 1%, but the damage is 21% of your paycheck. On a portfolio meant to pay Denise $30,000 a year, that is thousands gone. Now, to be fair, a great advisor can absolutely earn that fee. Good tax planning alone can easily save more than 1%. The real problem is the advisor who quietly collects and does very little. Denise had exactly one of those, and she truly did not know it. Her advisor rebalanced twice a year and mailed a monthly newsletter. For that thin service, he quietly collected over $7,000 annually. Now run the numbers on 20 full years of $7,000. With lost growth included, that is well over $200,000. $200,000 for a newsletter and an occasional rebalance. Think about what that $200,000 could have done instead. It could have paid for years of Denise's actual retirement. It could have covered healthcare, travel, or a gift to her grandkids. Instead, it quietly funded someone else's office and someone else's boat. That is the real price of a fee you never feel. A cost you cannot see is a cost you never question. Denise did not fire her advisor out of anger or spite. She simply calmly asked what exactly she was paying him for. When the honest answer came back thin, she moved to a flat fee. A flat fee planner charged her just a few $1,000s total. The actual service was the same. The silent drain was gone. Silent cost number 2, finally exposed and completely shut off. Before you dismiss this next one, please hear it carefully. Silent cost number 3 is the tax you completely forgot was coming. Denise assumed her taxes mostly ended when her paychecks did. Most people believe retirement is some kind of low-tax paradise. Here is what actually happens to a lifelong saver like Denise. Her money sat inside a traditional 401k for over 3 decades. Every single dollar in that account had never once been taxed. The government was always, quietly, going to collect its share. At age 73, the rules force you to start withdrawing. They are formally called Required Minimum Distributions, or RMDs. The IRS calculates and tells you how much you must take out. And every dollar of that withdrawal is taxed as ordinary income. For Denise, that forced withdrawal was tens of thousands of dollars a year. But it did not just create a simple tax bill by itself. That larger income pushed her into a higher tax bracket entirely. Then it quietly made more of her Social Security benefits taxable. Then it triggered a sneaky Medicare surcharge called ERMA. One forced withdrawal set off 3 separate costs all at once. That is the hidden tax web that nobody ever warned her about. Let me walk you through how quickly that web tightens. The RMD adds, say, $40,000 to her income. That extra income lifts her from one bracket into the next. Suddenly, a bigger slice of her Social Security becomes taxable too. Then her Medicare premium jumps because her income crossed a hidden line. One withdrawal, 3 separate bills, all arriving in the very same year. And every year after that, the forced withdrawal gets even larger. And if a retiree ever forgets to take an RMD, the penalty is steep. Missing it can cost you 25% of the amount you skipped. 25% for a simple paperwork mistake, gone in an instant. Imagine skipping one form and handing over a quarter of the money. No investment loss on earth stings quite like that one. And yet thousands of retirees miss this deadline every single year. Here is the whole trap in one sentence you can actually remember. A tax-deferred account is not tax-free. It is only taxed later. And later, it turns out, has a habit of costing far more. The good news is that Denise could soften this years before it hit. In her low-income early retirement years, she had a valuable window. She could slowly convert money into a Roth account, on purpose. The idea is simple, even if it sounds a little strange. You choose to pay some tax in your cheapest years. You do it before the government forces your hand later. Pay a little tax now, at a low rate, deliberately. Then let those forced taxable withdrawals shrink for good later on. She could also use charitable distributions to satisfy her future RMDs. Give directly from the IRA and the RMD becomes completely tax-free. Denise started her Roth conversions the very year she learned all this. Silent cost number 3, planned around instead of paid blindly. Now we reach the cost that hides in the plainest sight. Silent cost number 4 is inflation, the invisible withdrawal. Nobody ever sends you an inflation bill, and that is exactly the danger. Your account balance can sit exactly the same on paper, and still quietly lose a huge chunk of its real power. Most people track their balance and completely ignore its purchasing power. Here is what the data shows about slow, steady inflation. At normal historical rates, prices roughly double every 2 decades. $50,000 of spending today needs $90,000 in 20 years. Same lifestyle, same house, nearly double the dollars just to stand still. Put another way, a dollar you hold today is silently shrinking. In 10 years, it may buy only about 70 cents of goods. Denise never spent that missing 30 cents. It simply evaporated. That is the invisible withdrawal that hits every retiree, every year. And it hits absolute hardest on the things that retirees buy most. Healthcare, housing, groceries, and utilities all tend to climb faster. For a 30-year retirement, inflation is quietly the biggest silent cost of all. Picture Denise's grocery cart on the exact same shopping trip. This year, it costs her $100 to fill. In 20 years, that identical cart costs nearly $200. She did not buy more food, and she did not waste anything. The price simply climbed while her fixed dollars stood perfectly still. Now multiply that across every bill she pays for 30 years. That is why ignoring inflation quietly guarantees you run short. So how did Denise fight an enemy that never even sends an invoice? She did not flee entirely to cash, which only feeds the problem. She kept a healthy slice of her money invested for real growth. Stocks are volatile, yes, but over decades they have beaten inflation. She also built a rising income plan, not a flat frozen one. Her withdrawals were deliberately designed to grow a little each year. That way, her retirement paycheck kept steady pace with her prices. The goal was never to beat the market or get rich. The goal was simply to keep her dollars from shrinking. Growth was not greed for Denise. Growth was her defense. Silent cost number 4, planned for carefully instead of ignored. Which leads us directly to the mistake that felt the very safest. Silent cost number 5 is the cash that feels so responsible. After one scary market year, Denise got understandably nervous. She moved $400,000 straight into a savings account. It felt safe, it felt smart, it honestly felt like control. Most people think of cash as the one asset with zero risk. Here is what nobody tells you about holding too much cash. Cash does not crash, that part is completely true, but cash does something far quieter and much sneakier instead. It loses slowly, silently to inflation every single year. $400,000 in cash still buys a little less each year. Over 10 years, that whole pile can lose a third of its power. And that loss never once shows up as a lower balance. The number on her statement looked identical, even comforting. That false comfort is exactly what makes it so expensive. A crash is loud, and a crash makes the evening news. Erosion is silent, and erosion never makes a headline anywhere. That is exactly why so many careful savers walk into it. Researchers even found retirees with large cash piles are quietly losing money. They lose to inflation, and they lose the growth they gave up. Here's the cruel twist that makes idle cash so sneaky. It feels like the responsible, grown-up, careful choice to make. You look at that big safe number and you feel protected. But protection from a crash is not protection from erosion. Denise's $400,000 was slowly melting in plain sight. The statement said $400,000, so she stopped worrying. The melting was real, but the number on the page hid it. Now, Denise was not entirely wrong to hold some cash. Keeping a year or two of spending in cash is genuinely wise. It protects you from selling your investments during a downturn. But $400,000 sitting idle was far, far too much. So Denise kept about 2 years of her expenses in cash. She put all the rest carefully back to work in a balanced way. A slice for stability, a slice for growth, a slice for income. Cash for the near term, investments for the long haul ahead. That balance let her sleep without slowly going broke while she did. The safe feeling stayed. The silent drain finally stopped. Silent cost number 5, right-sized and back fully under her control. So those are the 5 silent costs, finally laid completely bare. Fund fees, the advisor's percent, taxes, inflation, and idle cash. Each one is quiet. Each one is small in any single year. But stack all 5 of them on top of each other. A percent here, a tax there, a little inflation everywhere. Together they can quietly carve a hole worth hundreds of thousands. And that is precisely exactly why they are so dangerous. But now comes the part that almost no one ever explains. The 5 costs we covered are the ones you can measure. You can look them up, add them up, and fix them. But the most dangerous cost of all is much harder to see. It does not have a fee, a rate, or a line item. It has no name on any statement Denise ever received. And it can undo good planning even when you do everything else right. Because there is a 6th force hiding underneath all 5 of them. It is not a fee, and it is honestly not even a tax. It is the order your investment returns happen to arrive in. They call it sequence of returns risk, and it is completely ruthless. Here is the single fact that should genuinely stop you cold. 2 retirees can earn the exact same average return over time. The same years, the same average, the same starting pile of money. And one retires comfortably while the other quietly goes broke. The only difference between them is the order the returns showed up. Meet Tanya, a retiree who started with the very same amount as Denise. Tanya and Denise both averaged 7% over 30 long years. On paper, their 2 plans looked absolutely perfectly identical, but Denise happened to hit her great years early on. Tanya, through pure bad luck, hit her worst years first. Tanya's first 3 years brought steep, frightening market losses. She still needed her income, so she still had to withdraw. Every withdrawal came out of a portfolio that was already down. She was selling shares cheap just to pay her monthly bills. Denise, meanwhile, enjoyed 3 strong years right out of the gate. Her early withdrawals came out of a portfolio that was growing. She barely dented her balance while Tanya was quietly bleeding out. Tanya was forced to sell investments in a falling market. Every dollar Tanya sold low simply never got to recover. Those early losses, locked in, quietly poisoned her entire retirement. Denise's early gains, by contrast, gave her a lasting cushion. Same average return, same math on paper, 2 completely opposite lives. Tanya ran out of money in her early 80s. Denise still had a healthy balance well into her 90s. 2 women, same savings, same discipline, same average return. One lived with ease and one lived with quiet fear. The market did not choose to punish Tanya on purpose. It simply handed her the bad years at the worst time. One single thing separated them, and it was the order. Here is the line I want you to remember about your nest egg. The average return you were promised can quietly lie to you. Because you do not retire on the average, you retire on the order. And the order is the one thing you truly cannot control. But you absolutely can defend against it, starting today. That 2-year cash cushion is your real armor against bad timing. In a down year, you calmly spend the cash, not your stocks. You give your investments the time to heal instead of selling low. A rising income plan and rock-bottom fees do the rest of the work. You cannot choose which years the market gives you, but you can choose to never sell into a bad one. That single choice is what saved Denise and sank Tanya. That is how you quietly disarm the cost no calculator ever shows you. So let us finally bring Denise's whole story home. She did not find some secret investment or some magic return. She simply stopped the leaks that were draining her while she slept. She cut her fund fees down to almost nothing at all. She traded a percentage advisor for an honest, flat annual fee. She planned her taxes years before they were ever forced on her. She kept just enough growth to steadily outrun inflation. She right-sized her cash instead of fearfully hoarding it. And she built a real cushion against the cruelty of bad timing. None of it was flashy. Honestly, none of it was even hard. It was just the hidden math, finally brought fully into the light. Each fix on its own looked almost too small to matter. But 5 small fixes stacked together changed her entire future. That is the quiet power of plugging every leak at once. Her $740,000 went right back on track for life. That looming $300,000 leak was completely sealed. Here is what I really want you to take from Denise tonight. Your nest egg does not fail in one single loud moment. It fails in 100 silent ones you never even see. The invoice never comes, so you have to go looking for it yourself. Check your fees, check your taxes, check how much cash you hold. Ask your advisor, out loud, exactly what you pay him each year. Ask yourself whether your money is growing faster than prices. Ask whether your cash pile is protection or is quiet decay. These are not hard questions, but you have to actually ask them. The costs that move while you sleep are the ones that decide your future. If this helped you spot even one leak in your own plan, do one thing. Subscribe to Coach Nora Money and hit that notification bell. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every day. You do not need to be an expert to catch these leaks. You only need to be willing to finally look at them. Denise looked, and she saved $300,000 doing it. Your own number is waiting in a statement you have not opened. And always remember the one rule that protects every dollar you saved. Make the decision that matches your reality, not someone else's sales pitch.